Let's also try to understand, so where do things go wrong and why do people start hurting in relationships? One of the major factors that causes a lot of distress in relationships is the baggage or unresolved issues from a person's past. For instance, let us imagine that a person is feeling very distressed about the fact that their partner is talking to somebody else or seems to enjoy a dialogue with somebody else. This might be interpreted as unfaithfulness and it can cause a lot of friction in that relationship. But chances are also that the person who feels insecure has gone through something similar in the past which has not been resolved yet. Where they might have felt close to somebody and that person might have not been close enough to them, or maybe a third person might have interfered in that relationship, and all these hurtful feelings from the past have been stored away and they have not been dealt with properly. Therefore, the person seems to read that meaning into the present relationship also. Such unresolved issues from the past can cause a lot of distress in relationships. For a relational counselor, it is therefore very essential to understand that, as far as possible, not to give direct advice to either of the parties involved, because in that way, we will not ever be giving an opportunity for the person to work on that unresolved issue from the past. And we may also, in our overzealousness to agree with our client, also deny the psychological reality of the other person. For instance, this person could be talking to another friend, but they may not have been unfaithful in the least to their partner. It could be a meaning that the partner is reading in that relationship because of their own unresolved issues from the past. So this is a huge cause of distress in relationships. Another cause is incongruence. uh, this term incongruence, as Carl Rogers again has put it, is when a person's thoughts, feelings, and behavior are not in line with each other. It is as though some part of their own internal experience is sort of hidden from their own view, and what they should be doing according to the dictates of society seems to consume their attention, and they behave in that manner while they disregard their own internal psychological processes, or they deny their own reality, their own feelings. A very recent example of this kind was that in the lockdown period, um, a student was finding greater and greater comfort in talking to a friend who used to support her and who also talked to her in return. It was a mutually satisfying relationship. What was happening was that as the intimacy between these two people was growing, she kept pushing him away and she kept telling him that don't get closer than this, because you know that this relationship is not going to take us, it's not going to culminate into anything long term. So don't get too close to me. While saying that, she also kept giving him contradictory messages, in the sense that she kept telling him that it is important for you to open up, and I'm always here, and whenever you want to talk, you can definitely talk to me, etc. But when he came closer, she kept telling him that no, it's important for both of us to stay away, because we know that our parents will never approve of our relationship. Now, in this case, this student is going through what we call as incongruence, in the sense that uh, she knows that society expects her to not get into a relationship with the young man, but the urge from inside is to develop that dialogue, is that urge is to get closer to him, etc. And she is unable to accept that that feeling is there within her. Now, for her, the conflict looks as though it is coming from him. For her, it looks as though he is the person who can be blamed in this equation. But actually it is the incongruence in her, it is her own inability to accept her own feelings that is causing the distress in this relationship. Now, the third and very important cause of distress in relationships is when people are not able to understand somebody else from the other person's internal frame of reference. What that means is, when we listen to somebody else, many times we cannot help but see the reality from our perspective. Something which is the way we interpret their experience. And that gives the feeling to the other person of not being fully understood. Sometimes it can go to irritation or very high anger, and finally they can break all dialogue from us because they feel that they haven't understood, they haven't felt understood, or they haven't felt heard. So an important part in when two people are trained to listen to each other is, at least momentarily, to be able to sustain one's own frame of reference and to try to understand the other person from their vantage point rather than we imposing our own spin on the topic. For instance, if a student says that their parents send them money every month and it is very difficult for the student to manage in the meager money that the parents send, while listening to this, the teacher or the counselor or mentor might suddenly make a comment like, try to be more frugal with your money, or your parents are sending you the maximum that they can. You know? When we say such sentences, it is going to make the other person, the student, feel not validated or not heard fully. This is because in listening to them, we have already objectified them and we have already put our own spin on the topic. On the contrary, if a counselor were to really listen to the student from their internal frame of reference, they would probably say that, I know it's very hard for you to manage with the money that they send you. After having talked about what is it that people really expect from relationships, where does it go wrong? Um, I think it's a very small conceptual leap to understand what relationship counselors exactly do in that process. The aim of relational counseling is obviously to restore the sense of connectedness that people really want in a relationship. So, what relational counselors do is uh, to help people to get back into a kind of an open and trusting dialogue with each other. That is the reason that we avoid as far as possible to give direct advice. There are several reasons for this. One is that we may not be so much aware of the realities of both the people. We may not have that much grip on everybody's reality at the same time. So, giving advice can be a very one sided thing to do. Our advice may not turn out to be in the best interests of the people that we are counseling. So, as far as possible, we avoid giving direct advice. Second is that many times our clients have also tried to do a lot many things to help the relationship or to heal the relationship, but something has not worked. That is why getting advice from us might for them feel um, as though they are hearing again what they have tried and tested and it has failed. So it can be very frustrating for the clients to receive direct advice about relationships. Carl Rogers says very beautifully at one point, a person whose internal psychological world has been damaged is trying to repair it himself. If you interfere in that repair process, at best, you will delay that repair process. So the person will have to wait until you get out of the way to start the repair process again. And at worst, you deprive the person of a chance to ever heal that relationship or repair that relationship again. That is why relational counselors will not really give direct advice about the relationship. But the idea is to really facilitate an open dialogue so that something can be worked out. That sense of connectedness which has been missing can be restored. There is a concept called as multidirectional partiality. Multidirectional partiality means that the counselor has to be so warm and so empathic and so genuine that each person in that relational setting will feel as though the counselor understands me better than he or she understands everybody else. So each person feels fully understood and equally validated in the relationship. This is a skill that sets relational counseling apart from individual counseling. In order to really cultivate that multidirectional partiality, the counselor will have to learn that art of suspending his or her own opinions and trying to really uh, examine reality from the client's perspectives, even if that perspective is something which is very different from his or her own. That kind of a skill comes after a lot of introspection, about a lot of thinking about one's own prejudices, one's own biases as a counselor. So the counselor will have to examine the kind of cultural background that he or she has grown up in, the particular thoughts and belief systems that they have developed over the years, what feels right or wrong to them, how they themselves judge people and their experiences. All of this will have to be done, and also sufficient work on the self has to be carried out so that we can suspend our own judgment, or we can suspend our own beliefs and try to accommodate other people's viewpoints. It is only then that multi-directional partiality can really be possible. The relational counselor tries to create an atmosphere of safety for everybody involved in the counseling process. The first rule, which I'm sure we have already learned in the last several days that we have been participating in this online training workshop in counseling, is confidentiality. Complete confidentiality happens to be the first professional ethic that a counselor needs to practice. Uh, which means that in a relational setting, the all the clients who come in for counseling must be reassured that the counselor is not going to divulge anything of what they have said to the other person offline, maybe through messages or calls or anything. So utmost safety needs to be created in that counseling space. Safety also means that the counselor is not going to judge, or the counselor is not going to pass value judgments about the client's experiences. When such an atmosphere of safety is created, people are slowly able to experience what is happening to them, because they understand that no matter what they say, this counselor is not going to judge me. And so slowly, step by step, they start warming up to the counselor and they start opening up more and more. When that happens, they become progressively more aware of what is happening um, in their own mind, what is happening to their own feelings. A few minutes ago we talked about incongruence. So they start moving from incongruence to greater and greater congruence, which means they start to understand what is really happening to them internally, and then they start feeling more empowered to accept whoever they are, whatever they are feeling in the present moment. And this in turn can be very helpful for a relationship. The relational counseling also entails a basic trust in the formative tendency of the clients. Sometimes relationships do not heal because people try to avoid conflict, and they have been trying to avoid conflict for sometimes many years at a time, because they don't want to bring up the topic which is conflict producing. It keeps festering, and anger and resentment grow, and it wedges a gap between people. Usually, when such issues are brought to the counseling setup, there is quite a possibility that strong emotions and especially negative emotions might surface in that process of counseling. Even when that happens, the counselor has to have that basic trust that the clients eventually do figure out a way out of their problems. They navigate a way out of their problems. That basic trust that the counselor embodies gives that faith to the clients also, that it's fine to have a conflict, it is fine to express it in that context of the counseling process. There is a guarantee that they are going to be heard and something will come out of it.